I'm now joined via Zoom by the University of South Africa political science professor Dirk Kotze. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to have you on the program.
Thanks very much. Good evening.
All right, this IEC ruling by the Constitutional Court, I suppose a big win for the ANC because they hadn't done their homework before, and this perhaps gave them a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yes, I think that is how the public in general will see it. They will understand it is that it gives a second chance for the ANC. However, I've heard some comments by ANC persons who are saying they are still struggling to meet the deadline, which will be tomorrow, and that it is therefore not a guarantee that though they had this opportunity, it will be giving them the reason to be able to field candidates everywhere. And then, obviously, I think this is what we have to remind ourselves is once a person is nominated, there's no guarantee that that person will be elected. And we've seen also in the campaigning of the criticism that has been directed at ANC persons, senior persons. So they still have an uphill struggle in the election campaign itself.
The DA have suggested that things look very suspicious in the way that the IEC has behaved. From what you've seen, is there any reason that they might think that?
I think from their point of view, if you look at it from a political point of view, not so much from a legal point of view, because I think the legal arguments have been provided by the Constitutional Court, and it's very difficult to find fault with that. They have observed themselves in today's judgment that the IEC initially presented to them an argument of saying that they won't be able to, or it will be unlikely to have some registrations before an election at the end of October or early November, before initially when they wanted to ask for postponement. But subsequently they made it possible, and we saw it this past weekend. Now, so the court itself observed that. But I think what we are seeing is that the political parties, and that's the DA, the EFF, the IFP, and others who supported the DA in this application, that they obviously realized that they had a major advantage when the ANC could not submit all the candidates in the first round. And now for them, unfortunately, they've lost that advantage. And I think that is the main argument. That is the main sort of disappointment that exists amongst them. But if it is ultimately, I think if you are not directly involved in the party politics, I think I would argue, for example, is that ultimately we want to see that candidates who have support, that they must be able to campaign and be elected. That parties must present themselves to the public, and the best party and the most supported party must receive the most votes ultimately. And that the voter turnout should be as high as possible. So I think these are all considerations that, from my point of view, is very important that we try to promote during this election. If for technical reasons some parties are disqualified, yes, in terms of regulations, it is so, but from the general political climate, the democratic point of view, it will be unfortunate.
So some political parties who in the past were disqualified because they didn't submit on time might say, hang on, this is not fair. We were penalized in the past. How come the rules change now?
Yes, I mean, we think about 2016 when the National Freedom Party, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, were penalized in this respect. And the ANC in 2008, more specifically in the Western Cape, in Cape Town and some of the West Coast constituencies in a by-election also. So there are certainly precedents for where this has been the case. But then it affected one party very directly. So I think we will have to have some more clarity in future about the application of timetables and to what extent the IEC is going to be very strict with that.
So they may have acted within their laws and their powers, but in terms of public view, because you want the IEC to appear independent and you want to trust their work. Do you think that this whole saga may have damaged their brand a little bit?
I think for the moment, yes. It has certainly created a lot of suspicion in amongst the public. I think some of the parties, political parties, feel unhappy with the way in which the IEC managed this situation. It is now for them to prove that they are still an IEC which is independent, which is unbiased, which create a level playing field for the political parties. Now with the run-up, well, first of all, to apply the closure of the nomination of the candidates tomorrow, late tomorrow, and then how they are going to deal with the rest of the campaigning and the day of the election and the counting afterwards. So I think that is going to be the main test for the IEC, that they are going to demonstrate their abilities as a electoral managing body, as well as their unbiased nature. And it's a tough task because elections are always hotly contested periods, and parties are up in arms against each other. And the IEC is right in the middle between all of them.
Talking about parties up in arms, what we saw in KwaZulu can't be encouraging. And are you fearful that we might see more friction between the parties in the lead up to these polls this year?
Unfortunately, KwaZulu-Natal is always a hotspot for conflict between parties, but also within parties. We've seen it in the past between the IFP and the ANC, but later on within the ANC. We've seen sometimes a little bit of conflict in the Western Cape, not at the same level, but the rest of the country normally has at relatively low levels of political or electoral conflict. So hopefully this should be the same again, despite the fact that there's contestation. I think in this particular case, what we have seen in 2019 with the last provincial and national election is that the ANC lost about 10% of their support in KwaZulu-Natal, and the majority of that went to the EFF. And I think the ANC understands that the EFF has emerged more in KwaZulu-Natal. So there's more of an attention or focus on the EFF in KwaZulu-Natal than in the past. And they are becoming real contenders for the ANC. And I think that's part of the reason or the background for what we've seen in these visuals now.
The president has said this is wrong and it shouldn't happen. Does this suggest that in terms of controlling the ANC on the ground in KwaZulu-Natal, he may find it a little harder than other parts of the country?
Yes, and he will have to rely on the provincial leadership and the local leadership. He can't control it from where he is. He will have to use especially the provincial leadership of KwaZulu-Natal to rely on them. And we have seen what happened in July in KwaZulu-Natal, and also all the ramifications around President Zuma. So it's a difficult province to manage and to have complete control over from a centre. But I think this is going to be a major test for the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, given the fact, as I mentioned just now, that at the last election, they actually lost substantial support. So it's for them now really to rebuild themselves in KwaZulu-Natal, and at the same time to prevent this internal contestation because they see the positions of councillors as really an opportunity for the future. So therefore, this intense competition for these few positions have heightened the potential for conflict. I would think that after the nomination process, that potential for conflict might be lowered a bit, but then it will become again a bit more about competition between the different parties in their campaigns there.
Why will the infighting within the ANC affect their chances there? Because I guess in the end, the ANC wants to get over the line. Yes, they may fight about which one of us gets over the line, but Will the voters not just vote the ANC regardless?
Well, I think it has to do with the history of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal over the past, let's say, the last period of President Zuma, the problems that developed there, the problems that developed, for example, in eThekwini with the mayor, Zandile Kumedi, that is now accused of corruption. The fact that, the real fact that KwaZulu-Natal has seen a major loss of influence in the ANC since 2017. The top 6 of the ANC who were elected at Nasrec in 2017 at the National Conference didn't include anyone from KwaZulu-Natal. So they saw it as a major sort of loss of power since the end of President Zuma as president. And I think it is not about only specific persons, but it is seen that the dominant period of President Zuma as the ANC president and being dominant in the ANC, that period has come to an end. And they feel the loss of that they are not anymore in the center of the ANC.
Professor Dirk Kotze, we're going to have to leave it there, but I have no doubt we'll have many conversations between now and October 27. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Professor Dirk Kotze from UNISA speaking to us about today's happenings, the IEC judgment, and of course, what appears to be political intolerance in KwaZulu-Natal. Right, you're still watching